This video is brought to you by HalloCasa. Our tool transforms independent local real estate agents to global real estate agents. Create your own profile for free and get contacted by international investors. Sign up with the link in the description.
Hello and welcome everyone to our 172nd session of HalloCasa. My name is Michael and today I'm talking to Kosmas Theodorides, the President of the Confederation of European Real Estate Associations, CERA, and Vice President of CEPI, the European Association of Real Estate Professions. CEPI acts as a kind of confederation bringing together both CERA, which represents real estate brokers, and CEPI, which represents property managers across Europe. As President of CERA and Vice President of CEPI, Kosmas is at the forefront of advancing professional standards, promoting cross-border collaboration, and shaping the future of real estate within the European Union. Today we'll talk about how CEPI works to unify and elevate the profession across member countries, the challenges and opportunities for brokers and managers in a changing market, and the importance of ethical frameworks and regulatory cohesion in the real estate industry. Kosmas, thank you so much for coming to the show. I'm very honored to have you. And why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
Thank you for having me, Michael. It's an honor to be here with you. And thank you for your kind words. This is more or less the situation with CEPI. CEPI is the Confederation of European Real Estate Professions. And I am presiding over the Brokers Branch, the Confederation of European Real Estate Associations.
Tell me a little bit about yourself, first and foremost. How did your real estate journey start? From the very beginning, because none of us is directly being born as a real estate expert professional. And I doubt a little bit that when you were 3 or 4 years old, your dream was to become the president of CEPI.
No, definitely not. And it's especially in Greece, especially in markets that are not so well developed. Being a real estate broker or agent is not seen as a proper profession even. But that changes, of course, because as in the biggest market in the world, the American market, being a broker is a very highly thought of profession. And also in some of the European markets, our colleagues are doing very well. And that has changed the image of the profession in those markets. And as I said, in Greece, it's changing as well. My journey is complicated. It's a good question that you asked, because I used to work in academia. So I used to work at Imperial College. I did a PhD in biology, in molecular biology. Imperial College is located in London. And London at the time was a very hot real estate market. So I was looking for something to buy with my wife. And we both had at the time, lecturer salaries. And we couldn't afford anything in the city center where our job was. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. I had some interest in real estate before. And I had some small experience as an assistant to a local broker. And I thought, come on, this can't be true. It's like we are making like academic salaries, which are thought of as very good salaries in Greece, not in London, by the way. And we can't even afford a studio flat. At the end, by saving and by looking at the local market and so on and so forth, we did manage to buy a flat, a 1-bedroom flat in London, Caledonian Road at the time, which is borderline Zone B. But that was it. I decided that if I was to make a career change from academia and biology to business, real estate had to be my target profession. So I did, and I came back to Athens, Greece, and I worked as an agent for a company, and then I started my own company. Unfortunately, this was at the beginning of the very big crisis that hit us, as we had over 10 years of market collapse. And I remember we had Chris, who was at the time the vice president, I think he was back then, of NAR, who came and visited us. And I told him I chose to establish my brokerage at the very wrong time, just as real estate was falling off the cliff. And I remember him saying, no, you did the right thing, because you are flexible to change your cost structure. You will see that a lot of brokerages will go out of the market because they are not quick. They have a cost structure and they don't know how to change it. And this is more or less what happened.
Now talking about CEPI, I am in contact with various associations from around the world, sometimes talking to people, to members mainly. Give us an overview of the origins of CEPI and also the mission, even though I touched upon it very shallowly, but give us there like more depth to it.
is a confederation that has several decades of history. And it's also an umbrella organization that has incorporated other organizations. So we are at the end of a long process of merging, in the beginning of a lot of competition, of course, and fighting, but now a lot of merging and understanding and collaboration. So I am very happy to tell you that we are now on a stable route and on a stable path to help elevate the profession across Europe. CEPI is not only comprising of associations within the European Union, we also have countries that are outside the European Union but aspire to join the European Union in some cases. And we are always welcoming members from other countries that are not already members. In some countries, we have more than one associations that are part of CEPI. And in some other countries, we have only one. So we are an umbrella organization. And I think we are doing quite a good job at the European level, because as the European Union in Brussels, in order to protect the sector's interests, but above all, to protect the consumer and to make sure that this market is functioning properly.
Let's get a bit deeper there on the pillars. What are basically certain tactics or initiatives you're running in order to exactly achieve these elements?
This is another interesting question, because when I was elected the president of PAC at the time, now it's CERA, we changed the name, by the way, to make it more easily comprehensible with the general public, but it's the same organization. So when I was elected president and vice president of CEPI, my first problem, and I discussed it with my colleagues, was that we didn't really know who to talk to at the European Union level. At the time, this might sound crazy, but it's true. At the time, we didn't have institutional points of contact. I remember my first contacts were with people at the labor portfolio of the European Union, because housing was considered to be part of that portfolio, funnily enough. We had people from the economy portfolio, and of course, we had people from the energy, because at the time, we had a lot of the European directive about energy efficiency. But all of them were like very sympathetic, because they're politicians, of course, they have to be like they do not really kick you out of the door. But it was not their business. It was not their job. And I thought to myself, we must do something here. We need to go and energize, like lobby at the European Parliament, and at least make a committee. Or ideally, we would like to have a commissioner about housing, but at the time it was towards the end of the previous administration, the previous von der Leyen administration, and it was all, people were saying, just wait for the elections, and then we will help you with what you want to do. And so it happened, and a lot of people helped. I am very grateful to several Greek friends who work for the European Union organizations and for the European Parliament. And of course, a lot of MPs that we had contacts with, and they were very helpful. So now we have a commissioner for energy and housing, and this is a sign of the times, because the housing crisis is biting all over Europe, especially younger generations and non-privileged people. But we have a commissioner. Jorgensen is the commissioner for energy and housing. Okay, we don't have a commissioner just for housing, but at least we have somebody to talk to. You can go to Brussels and meet some people who are planning policies. And of course, we have a special committee for the housing crisis at the European Parliament. So I am grateful, and I am really happy that we managed to succeed in those targets. And we do have now institutional points. We can pick up the phone or send an email, and somebody will reply to us.
There are certain elements to that. It's absolutely, as you say, it's a huge pressure on everyone not owning and everyone trying to be like a good tenant somewhere in a metropolitan city across Europe. How do you think can policies change that? Do you regard the necessity of constructing more, of maybe even working with monetary policies regarding interest rates, inflation, since real estate is the biggest asset class, money printing is a huge topic, flowing from higher asset classes to lower ones on a subsequent scale? What are there in a nutshell, the policies or the, let's say, initiatives you're trying to drive?
I will go back to my academic background, and I will tell you that first we need to do some basic research to see the causes and the underlying current. And second, of course, to address them, because just finding out what's going on is not necessarily sufficient. People suffer. And I really mean that in a literal way. If you're a young couple or a young person trying to become independent, in some cities of the European Union, you're priced out of the market. You cannot rent, let alone buy. So it is a big problem. Now, there are many elements to this problem. So one of the issues that we face is, as you said, is basically the debasement of currency, right? So you have, if you see the prices in gold, and I will go back to basic research here. If you see, this is something, one of my favorite topics. If you see the prices in gold back in the 70s, and you see the prices in gold now, you will realize that real estate has not really appreciated that much. I will tell you a story that is my personal story. When I came back to Greece, that was around 2005, 2006, I bought a flat. And I bought that flat for 50,000 euros. And of course, then the crisis hit. And if I would have to sell it, I would probably sell it half price because we lost about 50% of market value at the time. And then 2 years ago, I was about to sell it for 150,000 euros. That was for the Golden Visa program, along with something else. And then, of course, the Golden Visa program was modified. And now, last year, they made me an offer of 120,000 euros. And I said, no, I won't sell it. I rent it out for 550 euros. So to cut the long story short, you would say, okay, you bought it 50,000 euros back in 2006 or 5, whenever that was. And now, 20 years later, it's 120, 150,000 euros. You made the profit. But at the time, and this is, you can check it, the golden sovereign, the pound sterling, the golden piece, was less than 100 euros. And now it's over 700 euros. So I actually bought that for about 500 golden sovereigns, golden pounds, and now it's not even 200. So one thing is inflation is massive. We don't see it necessarily, but because real estate is property, that it incorporates inflation as well as GDP increase. This is why you see the prices skyrocketing, the nominal prices, right? Because the real prices, as I said, if you have to calculate them with something different, and they're not, if you calculate them in gold, they have not really skyrocketed. They're about where they were plus minus in most cases. Another issue that we are facing is that we have, in Greece, for example, we have about 2 million residential units in the countryside that nobody lives in. So we have a surplus of residential units because demographically the country is falling. I would say in some cases even collapsing. But people concentrate in big cities and tourist areas, and there we have the problem. We don't have the problem overall in Greece. That would be wrong to say. Probably in something like 80 or 90% of the country, there's no problem. Real estate is very cheap. You can buy a house in the countryside for 10 or 20,000 euros. Nobody wants to live there. Everybody wants to live in the big cities. And in the big cities, we have big problems. And this is why there is a regional element to the housing crisis. And I am very happy that the Housing Committee has recognized that and is working on it. Now, these are the fundamentals. But what is happening right now? Right now, we have big problems in the cities. And one of the problems that we have is that we have a lot of closed apartments. For example, in Athens, we have hundreds of thousands of closed flats. Why do we have closed flats? Because we have to refurbish them. They're old flats. Most cities in the European continent were built long ago. And you cannot put them in the market unless you seriously renovate them. But owners of real estate are mostly old people. Because towards the end of your life, you accumulate enough capital to own your flat or to have an extra flat for rental income. Or you have a lot of heirs that, like they inherit properties from their uncles, from their fathers and mothers, their families. So you have a lot of property owners that have lots of flats, but they don't have the capital to renovate them. So there you have another problem. If you could open those closed flats, then it would be fantastic. These people are keeping them as assets in the way that we keep gold. It doesn't have a yield, but you keep it there for a rainy day, and you think, okay, I might sell this for 200,000 euros and solve the problems that I have in my old age. This is what's going on in the European Union. And I have to say that the previous parliament made a huge mistake, in my opinion, in saying that we will not be able to rent flats or residential units in general unless they're heavily renovated, unless they go to energy class, they upgrade 3, 4 energy classes. And then in the beginning, imagine that this directive was saying that very soon you won't be able to rent anything unless you renovate it. But small owners, they're mostly aged people, and they don't have the capital to renovate. This was not right. And this is what I'm saying to the Housing Commission and everywhere in the European Commission. This has to change. Or if this does not change, we need to give the funds to people and the incentive to renovate the flats. There's an interesting example. We were discussing this at the PTC the other day in CEPI. It's a committee for policy. And my Irish colleague Ed told us that in Ireland, they are giving 50,000 euros to the owners to renovate the flat. I think this is remarkable. And this is also the way forward. It's not a loan, it's a handout. They give out 50,000 and they tell you, okay, please don't keep your flat closed, refurbish it. And we will give you the money to do that. That's the way forward, in my opinion.
It actually also puts a different light to the golden visa schemes, because the way I see it is they put a lot of pressure on it. People are buying, holding, not necessarily renting out. The money flows to the high net worth individuals, even higher. We have more, let's say, unoccupied housing in the bigger cities. Why in the bigger cities? Because they have the money to buy, and they are also going along the trend of ever increasing real estate asset value. And on the other hand, they even sometimes assets, or let's say golden visa schemes, where they only incentivize foreigners to say, you get the golden visa if you invest. That's in the end actually discrimination towards the local citizens living in that country, not giving that incentive to them.
The golden visa programs, I don't want to demonize them. I don't want to say that they are like the solution to all our problems, but we have to be careful. Golden visa programs are really a developmental tool. I will tell you, we had a change of law last year in Greece, and I was spearheading the effort to rationalize the golden visa program. You can use the golden visa program and all these programs, of nationality by investment and all that, to channel funds to certain sectors that you need cheap capital, cheap and willing capital. For example, I will tell you, last year with the change in the law that we had here in Greece, we made it possible to have a golden visa, a cheap golden visa, 250,000, because the other one is 800,000, it's very expensive. So this category was only for brownfield development. Because in Athens, for example, we have a lot of buildings that are derelict, that are abandoned. And I thought, and I said to the ministry, and luckily they accepted it, that if we refurbish these buildings and we can sell them for the lower grade golden visa, a lot of capital is going to flow into there. And Michael, today it's very difficult to build new units in Athens because there are not many plots left. And some of the plots that are left are small houses, really picturesque. You need them in the urban tissue. So now with this brownfield initiative, we have about 10,000 units, 10,000 residential units developed as we speak. So this was very successful. We have always to bear in mind that the economy is like a car that needs fuel to move, and the fuel is capital. And if you cannot provide capital in any other way, you have to attract it. And what essentially we're doing with the golden visa programs or with the passport programs that some countries have is we attract cheap and willing capital. And we have to bear that in mind. It is impossible to help the needy without having money.
Thank you so much for this clarification, and I fully agree with you. Moving forward, and I know your time is limited, and for me, it's very important to respect your time here. Maybe some concluding words from your side, which we haven't touched upon, and I would definitely also love to have you one more time on the show. Concluding thoughts from your side, and maybe also moving forward, what can we expect regarding initiatives from CEPI?
I will say, as my term is running out, I'm only elected for 3 years. I think that we are leaving a very good legacy to the people who come to behind us, because they can work with the institutions that have been established on this term, and they can really push the agenda forward for the good of the sector and of the consumer. I think there's a lot to be done in the next 3 years, and I am certain that now that the European Union has realized how big the housing problem is, we are going to have a lot of, the train has started moving, and it's difficult to stop a train once it started moving. But I am very optimistic. I think the next 3 years, we're going to see a lot of developments in the European Union, especially for young people, for young couples who want to start families, and for people who are disadvantaged.
I'm very happy that you have this position and that you exactly have this vision. I'm really looking forward to it. Kosmas, thank you so much for your time. I will put your contact information and the website into the show notes so that people
Please do. Thank you, Michael.
so that people can also study more. And thank you so much for your time. And I wish you a good afternoon.
Thank you, my friend. Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.
This video is brought to you by HalloCasa. Our tool transforms independent local real estate agents to global real estate agents. Create your own profile for free and get contacted by international investors. Sign up with the link in the description.